close to the exam, so I hope you're coping. This is a video on property dualism at the request of Benjamin Carter. It's not my favourite topic, I think a lot of you feel the same. However, there's no reason why it couldn't be an essay in its entirety. So that's what I'm aiming for today, to just give you an overview of what property dualism is and how you may want to weave in some of the arguments for it and turn it into some kind of essay. Disclaimer at the start, things like Mary's room and the zombies argument could probably do with a good half an hour on their own. So I am doing edited versions of those, so please be mindful of that I'm doing this kind of very, very quickly. So with property dualism, obviously it comes under the dualism section of your specification. If you look at the heading it's given, I know this is not a particularly technical way of doing it, that heading is the same size as behaviourism, identity theory, so you need to give it as much attention as you would give those other topics. It's not just an add-on to substance dualism. If we go with the assumption that substance dualism is false, for starters, again, separate topic, and most academic philosophers do make that, well, not an assumption, make that argument that substance dualism is false. You're looking at about 1 to 2% of academic philosophers who still believe that, led by Johann Swinburne, but not many people agree. So let's go property dualism then. We'll agree with materialism. There is one substance, and that is matter. However, it disagrees with physicalism. Now, physicalism is the claim that everything that exists is either physical or supervenes upon the physical. So to take that idea of supervenience, if you take the physical patches of colour on a canvas, then the aesthetic qualities of that painting will supervene upon those physical patches of colour. Were you to make a change to those physical patches of colour, you will get different aesthetic qualities. If you have two identical paintings with identical physical patches of colour, you will have identical aesthetic qualities. Now, according to, say, identity theory, that would be true of the mind. So if you have identical neurological structures, you will have identical mental states because mental states are physical properties. Another way to look at this is all facts are physical facts. When you know everything there is to know about the physical, you know everything there is to know. You know, once you know all physical properties, once you fix those, you know everything. So if we were able to show either that it's possible to have identical physical qualities and different mental qualities, or we were able to show that not all facts are physical facts, then we have arguments for property dualism. So what Chalmers says, this is your man Chalmers, advocate of property dualism, is that if we have a complete physical account of the mind, we know about physical structure, we know about its function. What we can't account for that, it's the qualia, it's the phenomenological aspect, it's the way it feels. That can't be accounted for in purely physical terms, and yet that is a really important part of consciousness, suggesting that there is more to mind than just physical facts. Now, it may well be that you've got a correlation here. It may be that, you know, in our world, with our laws, every time you have that brain state, you have that mental state. However, it doesn't have to be the case. It's not a metaphysical necessity. It's possible that those two things could be separated. And if you can prove that, or at least argue that, then you've got your argument for property dualism. So let's start off with Imam Frank Jackson. And he proposed the knowledge argument for property dualism and the Mary's room argument. Again, really brief version I'll give here. You can probably do a better one if you've done your revision. Mary is a brilliant neuroscientist, and she's been born in a black and white room. I mean, just go with it because I know that it doesn't make a lot of sense. But she's been born into a black and white room. Everything she's ever experienced has been black, white, and shades of grey. Her skin is black and white, her clothes are black and white, her books are black and white, she has a black and white TV screen. She's never ever experienced colour, and yet, in her genius, she knows every physical fact there is to know about colour. Everything. She knows about light waves, she knows about the retina, she knows about the structure of our brain. There is nothing physical she doesn't know. Now, when she's released from her room and she goes out and she sees a red object, Frank Jackson's point is, when she looks at that and she experiences red, she gains new knowledge. She gains, okay, that is what it's like. That's red. And that qualia is new, it's new fact. Now, if it's true that she gets that new fact when she's released and she experiences colour, then there's something about consciousness that is not accountable for in the physical, because she had all of that. She had every physical fact, and yet there was something she didn't have, a fact that she didn't have. Hence, physicalism is false. Now, there's been numerous responses to this, and the responses are actually quite tricky. If you think back to the very start of epistemology, where you've got different types of knowledge: propositional knowledge, acquaintance knowledge, and ability knowledge. What we're talking about here is that she gains new propositional knowledge, facts about the way the world is. So she gains something new about the way the world actually is. Now, if you can show that instead that it's not propositional knowledge she gains, then physicalism may remain intact. So it might be that she gains ability knowledge. So now I have the ability to recognise red, to identify two red objects as being similar. So it's a skill, perhaps. So, for example, if I was to have every physical fact about riding a bike, so I study riding a bike and I know every physical fact, and I know about balance and I know about gears and all the rest of it. If I was then to go ride a bike, then I haven't gained any new factual knowledge. I knew all the facts, but I've gained the ability to do it. So you could argue that that's what she's getting, the ability to do something rather than a factual knowledge, hence all facts are still physical facts. Alternatively, maybe she gains acquaintance knowledge. That's being acquainted with something, kind of, I always think about kind of meeting it. And again, if you were some kind of celebrity stalker, let's say that you loved Justin Bieber, is that still a thing? Let's say you love Justin Bieber and you stalked Justin Bieber, and you know every fact about Justin Bieber, and you know how many hairs are on his head, and every single thing about him. And then you return and meet Justin Bieber, you become acquainted with him. But in terms of facts, you don't learn anything new because you knew all of that anyway. You knew how tall he was, you knew his skin colour, you knew where his freckles were, you knew every physical fact about him, but now you're acquainted with him. So knowledge, yes. Factual knowledge, no. So again, Mary had all factual knowledge, and then she becomes acquainted with red, and that's different, but it's not new factual knowledge. Hence, all facts are still physical facts. So they can ask you on those specifically, those critiques, so just be careful with that. Then there's this really awkward one. I'm going to read it word for word. Mary gains new propositional knowledge, but this is knowledge of physical facts she already knew in a different way. The new knowledge, old facts criticism. So that's kind of wording. Now, again, what this means is she's gaining a new concept of the same fact. So if you take the tomato is red, that's a fact. She could know that tomato is red through the theoretical understanding of physics, or she could know the tomato is red through the experience of the qualia. Now, if she experiences the qualia, yes, she gains new knowledge, that new concept of redness, but it's not a new fact. She had that fact already. So let's say that I was a physicist, and there's a particular object here, and I'm clever enough at physics to look at that object and to know that molecules are moving in a particular way. I could know that that object was hot. Now, I have a theoretical understanding of that hotness, of that heat. If I was to then touch it, then I get a different kind of knowledge of that heat. But the fact that it was hot, I had that. So I'm not getting any new factual knowledge. I knew that it was hot, but now that, okay, that's what it's like to feel that hotness. So with Mary, it's new knowledge of the redness, but it's not a new fact. It's okay, that's what red feels like, but I already knew that object was red. So it all boils down to, again, all facts are physical facts, and in having all physical facts, she knew it was red. She doesn't get any new physical facts. Now, I'm not going to do this in this session, is go into responses to the issues, just because we're not going to have time to do that. The other one that's not on the spec, but I really like, that used to be on there, is by Dennett, and Patricia Churchland backs this up as well, is that who are we to say that she wouldn't understand qualia, that she wouldn't know qualia if she had all physical facts? So we're not just talking about somebody who's clever here, we're talking about somebody who knows every physical fact there is about colour. This is some kind of superhuman understanding. I mean, Patricia Churchland, Daniel Dennett would say, yeah, she'd know qualia. She'd understand that. She'd know the feeling of it. There's nothing left. Despite the fact that you could also argue that qualia don't exist. This idea of kind of us putting limits on what she'd know is just not right. So, leaving that aside for a minute, and you can do what you will with Mary and decide if you think that works. Let's move on to Chalmers. And Chalmers has the zombie argument. Now, your philosophical zombie is identical physical replica of, let's say, you, but without the conscious experience. So the philosophical zombie, it's not your kind of, Dawn of the Dead sort of, it looks exactly like you. But it would look at the blue sky and it wouldn't experience anything. So what you've got is the exact physical replica without consciousness. Now, there's a whole background into logical possibilities, metaphysical possibilities, physical possibilities that I'm not going to go into. I mean, you can check your lace swing for that. What I am going to do is just say that a metaphysical possibility is something we can consider when we think about possible worlds. Is there a possible world where philosophical zombies could exist? Now, I can conceive of it. I can conceive of a world where you've got exact physical replica of me, and yet when they look at the blue sky, they have no qualia. Now, if I can conceive of it, according to Chalmers, then it is a metaphysical possibility. If it is a metaphysical possibility, then the physical and the mental cannot be identical. Because according to Leibniz's principle of indiscernibility, if A equals B, you can't have A without B. So if it was true that my mind was a physical property, then you couldn't have the physical property without the consciousness. And yet I've just conceived of it. Therefore, it is a metaphysical possibility. Therefore, physicalism is false. Learn this in stages. There's no point waffling about it. Get your premises, get your conclusions, do it specifically. Now, in terms of critique, you actually follow the same format as you did for critique of Descartes' conceivability argument. So you move in stages where it's not conceivable. Well, even if it is conceivable, it might not be metaphysically possible. Well, even if it is metaphysically possible, it tells us nothing about the way our world is. So those three stages, Descartes' conceivability and zombies. So let's start off first with the idea that these zombies are not conceivable. So John's assumption to start with is, okay, I can conceive of these things. Then someone like Dennett would say, no, you can't, because if you conceive of something that's exactly the same physically and functionally, what else is there for consciousness? That's how we define consciousness. So the idea that it's almost like Chalmers is assuming what he's trying to prove, he's begging the question. Because if physicalism is true, then you couldn't conceive of that. Now, this one ends up in a little bit of a stalemate because the issue assumes physicalism is true and the criticism assumes it's not true. So, yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. But for Dennett, if something is identical physically and functionally, there's no other way to define mind. That's how I attribute it. So he would reject the idea that these zombies are conceivable. A better argument is the idea that what is conceivable may not be metaphysically possible. So you can use your masked man example for this. That's the one that often pops up in conceivability. So if I have, I might have an idea that the masked man who robbed the bank and my father are distinct entities. I can conceive of that. That doesn't mean it's metaphysically possible, because potentially, if the masked man was my father, then it's actually impossible for him not to be, because one thing cannot be and not be at the same time. So in actual fact, I might be thinking clearly of something that is actually impossible. So, I might be a really bad chemist, and I might think that actually water is not H2O. I can conceive of water not being H2O. I can conceive of it being H3O. And yet, if water is H2O, it's metaphysically impossible that it's not. Because actually, metaphysically, you are not going to get water that is not H2O. So I can conceive of something that is not actually metaphysically possible. Now, moving that on another stage, even if it was metaphysically possible, it doesn't tell us anything about the way our laws are. So I don't really care about possible worlds. I care about this one and our laws. And in our world, physicalism may be true. And actually, yeah, the phone fell down, but I have to teach soon, so I haven't got time to start again. So please bear with me on that. Where were we? Oh yeah, what is empirically true in our universe? We need to go out and disclose scientifically. So, what I'm suggesting is that the two arguments for physicalism being false don't necessarily work. Now pick an issue or a response that you think really works. Now, on top of that, property dualism doesn't solve all the issues with dualism as a whole. So let's think about these properties. And let's think about their relationship, the mental properties and their relationship to the physical properties. So let's think about perhaps those who believe that mental properties do have an effect on the body. So those interactionist property dualists, so mental affects physical and vice versa. Now, with that, we have the same problems as we did with substance dualism. How exactly do these mental properties have an effect when they have no location, when they can't exert any physical force, because that's not the kind of thing they are? So how would that actually work? Now, Chalmers does say that we can't really say that it doesn't happen just because we don't understand it. There's plenty of causal relationships we don't understand. But still, it's not clear. And in terms of Occam's razor, are we best off thinking that the physical world is actually causally closed? You could be an epiphenomenalist property dualist, in which case you've got the idea that the mental properties exist but don't have any effect either on other mental properties or on any physical properties. But then you've got the same problems with epiphenomenalism as substance dualism. Why would we evolve them if they don't do anything? If it's not a feeling of pain that makes me move my foot away from the broken glass, then why do I have the feeling of pain? So in terms of natural selection, how can I be an authority over my own mental states if I would believe I was in pain regardless of whether I actually felt it? Because the feeling of pain can't cause my belief that I'm in pain, because that would be mental event causing mental event, and that doesn't happen in epiphenomenalism. So I still have the same problems. I still have the problem of other minds. I still have the potential that we've made a category mistake here. This idea that we've mixed up the use of language, that mind doesn't refer to a separate entity, be it substance or property. It refers to the way the physical behaves. So I don't know what you want to do with essays. I'm not saying that property dualism is awful, but if you were to sort of outline property dualism and how it arose, pick Mary or zombies and say that actually this hasn't succeeded in proving physicalism to be false. We are still left with all the issues of interaction of the minds and category mistakes. So actually, property dualism fails. That could be an option. So, like I say, I've whizzed through that really quick. Hopefully it's kind of helpful. If you want to look at responses, do the responses, pop to your textbooks and have a look at that. We're running out of time, but if you do have any more requests, just let me know. Thank you.